Bon, good afternoon, everyone. I am the professor, and of course, I'm glad that you decide to watch this video. I have not done a video on Emini-FX for a while, and the reason that I haven't done a video on Emini-FX is because there hasn't been anything that's worth talking about. Because when I do this video, I'm doing them to teach so people to understand. So I know many of you have sent texts, comments asking why I haven't reported on what has been happening in court with regard to the case US versus Alexandre. Now, let me say this, guy. Right now, as we speak, there is a process called discovery. In the discovery process, a lot of little things happen. The lawyers are fighting among themselves, between themselves, to get a better position. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really change much. Right now in the case, there's been, of course, and I need to explain this very clearly. The attorney for Eddy Alexandre has the position that somehow the U.S. attorney has been talking to the civil side of the case. Okay, they've been talking to the lawyers from the civil side, from the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, and somehow they have worked together. Now, this is not news, guys. This is not news. Many agencies in the federal government, when there's an investigation, somebody get arrested, they talk to each other. Okay, they talk to each other, they share information. So I don't think anybody should be surprised that the U.S. attorney was talking to the attorney for the FTCs, that they're talking to them in the civil case dealing with discovery. Okay, so that always happens. So I'm not surprised. Is Eddy Alexandre going to stop the U.S. government from talking to the civil side? I doubt it. I don't think the judge is going to stop it. I think that they're going to continue cooperating until this case goes to trial. So when I look at the case and analyze what's been happening, there's really nothing strange. There's really nothing that's been happening. It's just lawyers filing motion, making sure that, at least in the case of Alexandre, his lawyers want to make sure that he's done as much as he can to make sure that he's doing his job. Now, one thing that hasn't happened, okay, there has not been a motion to dismiss the indictment. And the lawyer that Alexandre hired is a very smart lawyer. He was a former federal prosecutor. He understands what's going on. He hasn't filed a motion to dismiss the indictment. And I suspected probably the reason he hasn't filed a motion is because he knows that there's no way he's going to get that indictment dismissed. So if that were to happen, this is something that would be worth talking about, because this goes at the heart of the case. There would be a potential for the case to get dismissed if, in fact, the motion was filed and the lawyer indeed won the motion. That would be a huge turnout of event for Eddy Alexandre. But that's not what happened. Now, here's what I want to do today. Okay, there is a lady by the name of Elizabeth Holmes, and you should probably Google her name and you will find out who she is. I wrote an article on TUNews blog about her case. Basically, to tell you very rapidly, Elizabeth Holmes was the CEO of a company in California. And for the better part of 4 or 5 years, she raised millions of dollars from investors. And what she did wrong was that she lied to the investors about the nature of her business, the nature of what her test. Actually, to tell you very briefly, this was a company that was engaging in blood testing. For example, her claim was that her technology can detect certain disease via a blood test, but without having to go to a lab, without having to run the blood test into a lab. But anyway, this whole thing happened to be a lie, and she was indicted, basically kind of the same thing that Mr. Alexandre was indicted for. She was indicted, and the case went to trial, okay? The case went to trial. Her attorney represented her. She had one of the best attorneys, and she ended up getting convicted. And about 2 weeks ago, Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced to 11 years in prison. So I wrote an article not so long ago, and I said that CEO Eddy Alexandre can learn a lot from the case of Elizabeth Holmes. And the reason is simple, because the same type of actions that the government was complaining against Elizabeth Holmes is exactly the same type of thing that they're complaining in the case of Eddy Alexandre. Basically, they're saying that Elizabeth Holmes lied to the investors in terms of the nature of her business and what she was going to do with the money, which is kind of the same thing that they're accusing Eddy Alexandre of doing, lying to investors, telling them one thing and end up doing another. That's what the government is saying. And when that happened, unless you can prove that what the government said is not true, and you have evidence to show that the government isn't telling the truth, you've got a lot of problems. So I want you guys to remember, because I think a lot of you, especially supporters of Eddy Alexandre, they tend to think that somehow I have an agenda against Eddy Alexandre. And I've said this many times, in many videos that I've made. I said that I never met the man. I have absolutely nothing against him. He's a Haitian just like me, and I wish him the best. But I think part of what makes a community grows for the better is that we ought to be able to do two things. One, when something happens in our community, whether bad or good, we need to examine it. We need to talk about it and find out why this thing happened. So that if it's a good thing, we want to encourage people to engage in that type of behavior so that good thing can multiply. If it is something bad, then we want to examine what is it about us and how do we get to be involved in something like that. So I think that this case is important, and that's the reason why I've decided to cover the case. And I know there are some people who feel differently about it, and that's fine. This is a free country. You have every right to feel whichever way you want. But I want people to understand that I will continue to cover this case until this case is over. And the case is going to be over two ways. Eddy Alexandre is going to trial sometime next year, probably toward the summertime. He's going to trial. And if he wins, of course, we would have learned something from that. And if he loses, we also would learn something from that. So I'm going to continue covering the case. I'm going to continue talking about it. I'm going to continue explaining what's going on in the case to you. So next time, I want to be able to provide a list of all the people who invested in Emini-FX. Now, I know there's some people who have sent email to me, who have asked me how they can keep their name off the list. And I've explained to you that if you are an investor and you don't want the government to publish your name on the list of Emini-FX investor, you can write a letter to the office of the prosecutor and ask them not to publish your name. But otherwise, your name would be published. It would be public. As soon as I get the list, I will make it public. I will talk about it. I will talk about some of the name on the list, because I'm sure there are people on the list that I probably know, that I probably talk to. So we will be talking about. Meanwhile, if you have not subscribed to my channel, if you have not subscribed to The Real Professor, I'm going to ask you to do that, because when news are happening, and especially about this case, there is no better way to know exactly what's going on than to this channel. So I want you to subscribe to my channel so that you'll get notice once I dropped a video. So I thank you so much for watching the video. I will continue to watch the case very closely and let you know what's going on. All the news that is worth knowing, I will let you know about this case. So thank you for watching the channel. I am The Real Professor, and in this channel, we tell the truth all the time. Happy holidays to you all.